What draws someone to a life where the horizon never ends, to days measured by tides and the hum of engines instead of clocks? Tonight's sleep story is the first part of a two-part deep-sea fishing story. The quiet side of life at sea, aboard a working trawler bound for the cold North Atlantic. It's a journey through solitude, precision, and the calm that lives inside the storm. Good evening, traveller, and welcome to Realm and Reason. If you'd like to drift through more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe before you fall asleep. Now take a deep breath in and let it go. Before we begin, let's put your body to rest. Start by resting your attention at the top of your head. Notice the sensations, not just the image of the body, but the feeling of it. Slowly move down through your body, spending about 5 seconds on each part. With every exhale, let that area soften. Imagine your breath traveling through each place you focus on, releasing tension as it flows. Keep moving downward through your eyebrows, your cheeks, your neck and shoulders, your hands and fingers, down through your legs to the very tips of your toes. And now, release the whole body, let yourself drift and rest. Chapter 1. A Quiet Opening at Sea. The night hums like a living thing. A slow, steady vibration rises from deep within the hull. The hull being the ship's solid body beneath the decks, its ribs and bones of steel. The sound comes from a low-speed diesel engine idling far below, turning giant pistons that move with patient strength. It isn't the harsh roar people imagine. It's more of a pulse, a deep heartbeat of metal and oil that steadies the mind. You can almost count each revolution, not literally, but in rhythm. A slow, living measure you feel through your chest. Above deck, cables whistle softly in the wind. The air smells of salt and cold iron, with a trace of warm machinery, that faint mineral tang of metal under strain. Along the pier, harbour lights blur in the mist, glowing like lanterns underwater. The vessel waiting there isn't a small boat but a deep-sea trawler. A working ship built for long voyages, sometimes lasting months. Its purpose is industrial fishing, to drag vast nets through the deep, gathering the cold water fish that live far offshore. The hull is built thick to endure ice and heavy seas, its deck wide enough to hold cranes, winches, and tons of catch. Inside, everything is awake. The auxiliary generator, a smaller backup engine that keeps the ship's systems alive when the main one rests, hums in the dark. Its steady purr powers lights, pumps, heaters, and the soft buzz of fluorescent fixtures below deck. On a trawler, power must never fail. This is the still hour before departure, the moment when steel and crew alike seem to hold their breath. It's a pause that seafarers know well, when the land still feels near, yet the ocean is already calling. For many, this life is inherited. Generations of fishers and sailors who grew up on the edge of the tide. For others, it's something deeper, harder to name, a pull towards solitude and purpose. Whatever brings them here, it isn't comfort. The sea offers no comfort. It offers work, endurance, and a kind of peace that lives only in motion. On the bridge, the control and navigation centre perched high above the deck. Soft lights glow through the fogged glass. Inside, a watch officer moves quietly between screens and dials. Radar traces nearby vessels. An echo sounder pings beneath the keel, measuring the depth through sound. Each device hums softly, part of the ship's growing awareness of the world around it. A logbook lies open beside the compass, pages already smudged with graphite. At the edge of one entry, the note reads, "Engine steady, all systems normal." Below, the crew checks ropes and cleats. Near the bow, the ship's front, thick bowline ropes secure the vessel to the dock. The term bowline can mean both the lines at the bow and a famous sailor's knot used for strength that never jams. Here, it's both, rope and ritual. Soon a harbour pilot will climb aboard, a specialised navigator who knows every channel and current of the port. The pilot's job is to guide the ship through the narrow breakwater, the stone barrier that shields the harbour from waves, until the vessel reaches open water. Once there, the pilot will step back onto a small boat and disappear into the grey. Beyond the coast lies the North Atlantic, a sea shaped by great currents. To the south flows the Gulf Stream, carrying warm water up from the tropics. To the north, the Labrador Current brings ice and cold from the Arctic. Where they meet, fog forms like breath on glass, and storms rise without warning. Every mariner in these waters knows the mix well: beauty, danger, and unpredictability woven together. Long before modern trawlers existed, Norse explorers followed this same corridor of sea, sailing wooden ships from Scandinavia to Iceland and onward to Greenland and Newfoundland. 1,000 years later, the cod fleets of Newfoundland, men in oilskins, those thick, waterproof coats that once gleamed like amber in the rain, worked these waters by hand, hauling fish with ropes and faith. Their ships were smaller, but their resolve was the same. Today's crews inherit that same rhythm, though the tools have changed. Time here runs by a simple pattern: 6 on, 6 off, 6 hours of labour, 6 hours of rest, a cycle that continues day and night. It sounds generous, but fatigue still piles up. Sleep comes in short, dreamless bursts. The work is ruled by redundancy, not repetition. Every system has a backup, every engine a safeguard. At sea, one failure can bring another, and so nothing is left single. There is no such thing as extra machinery here, only necessary insurance against the silence that follows a blackout. A breeze lifts from the water, carrying the scent of diesel and salt. Somewhere, a gull calls once and then disappears into the fog. On deck, someone checks the mooring lines again, listening to the strain of rope against steel, a low rhythmic sigh. For those about to leave land behind, this is the last familiar sound. Once the ropes fall away, there will be only the sea's vast conversation: water, weather, and the hum of the ship itself. They know what waits: storms, fatigue, small triumphs. The ocean doesn't care about human plans. It tests without malice, teaches without mercy. Out here, survival depends on balance, between courage and caution, routine and intuition. And yet, for all its risk, there is serenity too. The horizon has a way of silencing the noise of the mind. The steady engine, the measured watches, the sameness of grey sea and white foam, they lull thought into stillness. Old sailors once spoke of 4 adversaries, though not as a superstition, more as a philosophy born from long voyages. Nature, the power of the sea itself. Creature, the living world, both the catch and the life that watches from below. Machine, the mechanical partner that serves faithfully until it breaks. And finally, self, the inner storm, the hardest to master. At times the ship's steel will vibrate with wind so strong it feels alive. When the wind reaches 11 on the Beaufort scale, a measure of wind strength used by sailors, it can roar at more than 60 knots, bending masts and shaking doors. But for now the sea lies still. Lights shimmer faintly against the mist. Somewhere deep inside a bell rings once, a signal from the bridge. Ropes tighten, engines rise. Those who crossed these same waters in wooden hulls centuries ago would recognize this moment, the quiet before surrendering to the unknown. They called it the calling of the sea, not adventure, not escape, but endurance. The ocean promises no glory, only truth, the kind found when everything else is stripped away. And so the story begins. 1 vessel, 1 crew, and the endless North Atlantic waiting beyond the harbour mouth. The engines settle into their rhythm, deep, steady, eternal, and the night exhales. Chapter 2. The Working Ship. By dawn the coast has vanished. The ship's wake trails like a pale thread through pewter water, the only proof of movement across a vast breathing sea. Ahead lies nothing but the slow rise and fall of swell, a rhythm as steady as a sleeping giant. Below deck the machinery finds its tempo. The main engine, a massive 2-stroke slow-speed diesel turning fewer than 100 revolutions per minute, beats with deliberate power. Slow speed in marine language doesn't mean gentle, it means immense. Each cycle of its pistons pushes thousands of tons of steel forward with steady endurance. The sound is less raw than heartbeat, a deep repetitive knock that you feel more than hear. The pulse of a mechanical world that never truly rests. Through the hull plating, the ship's skin of welded steel, the vibration moves like distant thunder. Every pipe and ladder carries the sound. The trawler is alive. The crew calls the engine room the plant, short for power plant. It's the heart that feeds every system aboard. Electrical current hums out through armoured cables to lights, cranes, and the humming labyrinth of the fish processing plant. The onboard factory where the catch will soon become packaged food bound for distant markets. Near the main engine, a smaller diesel turns quietly, the auxiliary generator. It's a backup source, ready to shoulder the ship's basic life support. Lighting, heating, pumps and navigation equipment. If the main power fails, at sea redundancy isn't waste, it's wisdom. Each essential system has a twin waiting to take its place. Inside the engine room, the engineers move among gleaming pipes and gauges. They check oil pressure, coolant temperature, exhaust temperature, and the slow hiss of seawater cooling, which draws cold from outside the hull to tame the heat inside. Each dial tells part of a conversation between man and machine. The smell here is distinctive. Marine diesel fuel oil, heavy and sharp mixed with the warmth of lubricants and heat exchangers. A senior engineer wipes a gauge face with a rag. He knows the numbers by heart. Oil too cool thickens and starves bearings. Coolant too hot strains seals. Exhaust too high hints at unburned fuel. The job is vigilance, constant adjustment to keep balance. A ship like this is a closed ecosystem. Fluids move endlessly, fuel in, exhaust out, cooling water circulating through heat exchangers, waste systems handling grey water and machinery runoff. Waste aboard a vessel means fluids that must be pumped, filtered and contained, not thrown overboard. Every system connects to another. Every connection can fail if ignored. Up on the bridge, the narrow control centre perched above the deck. Soft light glows on digital charts. The radar sweeps for nearby vessels. Sonar listens below. The autopilot holds a steady heading. Each sensor has its counterpart. Alarms that ring when pressure, temperature or flow stray beyond their limits. The officer of the watch, a quiet figure in a blue sweater, glances over his shoulder at a paper logbook. Even in this digital age, that logbook remains sacred, a handwritten record of position, speed, heading, weather, and the health of the ship. Each hour another entry joins the story. At the edge of the page, in neat pencil, someone has written, "Engine steady, all systems normal." The crew works by watches. A watch is a defined duty period, usually 4 to 6 hours, when a specific team keeps the ship alive. Engineers rotate through the plant, officers through the bridge, deckhands through maintenance rounds. When one watch ends, another begins without pause. Life continues in shifts, like a relay passed hand to hand across time zones and oceans. The galley feels almost domestic in contrast. Stainless counters gleam under soft lights, and a kettle hisses on the stove. A curved steel rail runs along each counter edge, a safety bar that keeps pots and pans from sliding when the ship rolls. Here, the cook is as vital as any mechanic. Hot food steadies the crew's rhythm, its comfort disguised as routine. He works methodically, anchoring himself with one hand as the deck sways beneath him. Every movement is measured, every pan clipped to place, every knife magnetized to its rack. The air carries warmth, coffee, and the faint metallic tang of steam mixed with oil from the vents. 2 decks below, the processing plant waits. This isn't a warehouse, but a self-contained factory built inside the hull. Conveyor belts run the length of it, leading from sorting tables to automated filleting machines, and finally to the cold rooms. Those freezers, sealed behind thick insulated doors, can reach -30 degrees Celsius, -22 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to flash freeze fish within hours. Inside, large fans keep air circulating evenly. Frost gathers on the steel walls like salt. The machinery runs continuously, drawing electricity from the same system that powers the lights above. If the freezers stop, the entire voyage is at risk. That's why engineers check temperatures hourly. Alarms are set to scream if they rise even a few degrees. Reliability is everything. Seconds matter when the margin for error is frozen solid. On deck, the hydraulic winches stand ready. Each one is a drum of steel cable connected to pumps filled with pressurized fluid. Hydraulics, they call it, allowing smooth, controlled motion even when the sea heaves beneath them. These winches will later lower nets weighing several tons into the depths. yet their power feels almost gentle in trained hands. The air on deck smells of salt and hydraulic oil, a warm, clean scent different from fuel, with a hint of iron and seawater. Crew members in heavy jackets check the bolts and locking pins. They know these machines will soon bear enormous loads. A frayed wire or leaking line can become catastrophe. Inside the ship's narrow passageways, small fans push warmth from the engine through the living quarters. The cabins are heated not by electric coils, but by waste heat circulation, water warmed by the engine's cooling system and routed through pipes behind the walls. Even the byproducts of motion have a purpose. Energy here is never wasted. Every part of the trawler has a voice. The low thump of the propeller shaft, the rhythmic sigh of the ventilation, the hiss of valves that regulate pressure. To newcomers it's noise, to veterans it's language. They can tell by tone alone when something changes, when a pump hesitates, when a bearing whines, when the rhythm shifts by a fraction. A large factory trawler like this isn't built for beauty. Its grace lies in endurance. The hull must endure ice impact and months of vibration. The engine must burn through hundreds of tons of fuel oil without pause. Every bolt, every circuit breaker, every weld contributes to survival. The men and women who live within this steel labyrinth respect that truth. They talk about the ship as if it were a living being, patient when treated well, temperamental when ignored. Maybe they're right. Machines inherit something from their makers: stubbornness, resilience, and the quiet desire to keep going. Far above, the bridge officer records another line in the logbook: engine steady, heading north by northwest. Outside, dawn spreads across a flat grey sea. The ship's hum deepens slightly as the captain increases revolutions, just enough to feel, not hear. A faint vibration ripples through the deck plates, a pulse of power answering the horizon's call. In that sound lies the truest partnership at sea: human precision and mechanical endurance, each incomplete without the other. And so the working ship moves on. Steel, diesel, and the steady hands that keep it alive. Chapter 3: Route into the Cold. The sea has begun to change. Its colour, once a forgiving grey-green, deepens into something colder, a blue so dense it feels like it could hold weight. The air grows sharper, carrying the dry metallic taste that warns of northern latitudes ahead. For several days the trawler has steamed steadily northwest, leaving behind the comfort of busy shipping lanes. Out here in the high North Atlantic, radio contact thins to static. Ships that once passed every few hours are gone. The radar sweeps its circular light across an empty screen. Isolation takes a physical shape. The feeling that the vessel is the only moving thing on an ocean the size of a continent. At first, the motion feels familiar. The hull rolls gently, the bow rising and falling in long breaths. But as latitude increases, the rhythm lengthens, the waves stretch taller, and the temperature on deck slides downward past freezing. Frost forms on railings. Every footstep rings against steel that holds the cold like memory. Up on the bridge, the officer of the watch checks the anemometer, the small cup and vane instrument on the mast that measures wind speed. The cups spin faster, 20 knots, a fresh breeze on the Beaufort scale. White foam streaks appear on the sea's surface, a mariner's first sign of strengthening weather. The crew knows these early cues. They read the sea as much as the instruments, watching the direction of surface foam, the slant of cloud bands, the dull metallic sheen that means snow may form within the hour. Out here, weather is made by conflict. Warm air sliding over cold water, or the opposite. Fog, snow and squalls rise with almost no warning. Each morning the captain studies satellite ice charts, the modern descendants of paper maps once drawn by hand. These charts show the latest positions of drift ice and bergs, gathered by radar, satellite imagery and sea temperature sensors. The reports come from the International Ice Patrol, a US Coast Guard service created in 1914 after the loss of the Titanic 2 years earlier. For more than a century it has tracked the Greenland ice stream, issuing daily bulletins that help ships steer clear of danger. Still, technology only goes so far. Ice hides what it is. Roughly 90% of any iceberg lies below the surface unseen. The small gleaming tip that catches sunlight is just a sliver of the mass below. Radar can miss the lower, flatter pieces and what sailors call growlers, so a human lookout remains essential. At the bow, a deckhand stands wrapped in heavy layers, his eyes adjusting to the glare of morning. His job is simple and ancient, to see. He scans for the unnatural white among greys and blues, for a glint that doesn't move with the water. Below deck, engineers make a quiet adjustment. The surface water has dropped close to 0 degrees Celsius, and slush threatens to form at the seawater strainers, the filters that feed the engine's cooling system. They switch the intake from the windward side to the lee, drawing water that's a fraction warmer and less likely to freeze. It's routine cold weather procedure, performed with the same care as a heartbeat. In the galley, condensation fogs the small round window. The cook wipes it with the towel and looks out at a sea of silver spray. He keeps a thermometer by the stove. Inside, a gentle 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside, minus 10 degrees Celsius, 14 degrees Fahrenheit. He mutters that coffee cools faster than he can pour it. By night the wind has learned to sing. The rigging, a lattice of steel cables and antennas that crowns the ship, turns gusts into music, a thin whistle that rises and falls as each wave passes. Below deck, sleep comes light. The motion has shifted from rolling to a steady shudder, like the tremor of a living creature fighting the cold. When the anemometer reads 30 knots, the captain calls for half speed. The bow now meets a head sea, waves coming straight on, striking the hull with measured violence. Each time the ship climbs a swell and drops, the bow slams down with a hollow boom. Sailors call this punching, and the sound carries through every bunk. Spray lashes across the deck and freezes in place. Within hours, ice forms along the rails and winch housings, delicate at first, then solid. The deckhands move methodically with wooden mallets, breaking it away before it becomes dangerous. Too much ice high on the ship adds top weight, extra mass above the waterline that can reduce stability. Out here, even beauty can threaten balance. During rare calms, the crew steps outside to breathe the Arctic air. It is so dry it squeaks in the lungs. The horizon has no detail, only tone, grey sea against paler grey sky. The world feels stripped to essentials. Human figures in bright survival suits walking across a deck of steel, surrounded by infinite cold. Beneath them, two great ocean currents wage their silent war. To the south flows the Gulf Stream, warm and swift from the tropics. To the north slides the Labrador Current, cold and heavy, carrying ice from Greenland. Where the two meet, temperatures clash so sharply that fog blossoms like smoke. Mariners call it the meeting of waters, an oceanic boundary where weather is born from friction. Sometimes the line is visible. The sea on one side glows dark blue, on the other greenish grey. Crossing it feels like stepping through a doorway. Instruments confirm what skin already senses, a sudden 2-degree drop in seawater intake, a new bite to the wind. At night, stars return in fierce clarity. With the satellite receiver humming beside him, the captain still lifts a sextant to the bridge window when the weather allows. The sextant, a brass instrument that measures angles between stars and horizon, was once every navigator's lifeline. Now it's a backup, a ritual of respect, a quick sight of Polaris, a small calculation, a line of pencil in the logbook, proof that sky and sea still agree on where they are. The sea builds again by week's end. 40-knot gusts sweep from the northwest. Force 8 on the Beaufort scale, a gale. Wave crests tear into white spray and the surface looks shredded. The bridge windows are salted, then rimed with ice before the wipers clear them. The captain eases the throttle. Saving fuel matters less than saving gear. Below, stabilizers, fin-like control surfaces extending from the hull, hum to life. Not every fishing vessel carries them, but this one does. Small hydraulic fins that counteract rolling. You can feel them working underfoot, subtle adjustments that keep plates from sliding and stomachs from turning. Its technology is empathy, steadying human motion against the ocean's unpredictability. In the engine room, the contrast is astonishing. The thermometer there reads 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Outside it's minus 15 degrees Celsius, 5 degrees Fahrenheit. Engineers strip to T-shirts, their faces slick with humidity, while above them the deckhands stamp frost from their boots. Someone jokes that perfect comfort probably exists halfway up the ladder. By the 7th day, the chart shows the ship near the outer edge of the Greenland Sea. Ice reports crowd the screen, drift lines converge. The lookout spots the first berg just before midnight, a white tooth of ice maybe 20 meters across, luminous under the searchlight. Only its crown is visible, the rest sleeps beneath the surface. The engine's slow, nobody speaks until it passes astern. Moments like that shrink the world to scale. All the technology aboard, diesels, radars, stabilizers and sensors, exists on the mercy of nature's patience. A single piece of frozen water, formed centuries ago, can undo it all. Yet the ship moves on, careful but confident. The logbook gains a new line. Weather moderate. Ice sighted off port bow, continuing course west-northwest. Overhead the sky unwraps an aurora. Green curtains flickering across black space. The glow ripples over the bridge windows and fades. Down below, the engine keeps its slow, patient beat, turning propeller against current, the only warm pulse in an ocean of cold. The ship presses forward, a pocket of light and endurance in a landscape made of wind and water. Human precision travelling through elemental truth. Chapter 4. The Gear That Hunts. Morning begins with sound, the slow turning of hydraulic drums as the trawler prepares its gear. The sea lies grey and glassy, a narrow strip of light breaking along the horizon. For days the ship has been tracking the continental shelf, where cold currents from the north slide across warmer water from the south. On the sonar, the captain has marked a promising stretch of sea floor, a flat plain nearly 1,000 meters deep, home to the slow-moving flatfish that feed there, halibut, sole, and other bottom dwellers that live half buried in sand and shadow. The trawler was built for this kind of hunt. On the aft deck, the crew begins to ready the trawl gear, a massive web of steel, rope, and netting. At a glance it looks like chaos, but every piece has a purpose. The head rope, strung with floats, holds the net's mouth open near the top. The foot rope, weighted with rollers and chains, keeps the lower edge pressed along the sea floor. Between them stretches the net itself, dozens of meters long, narrowing steadily toward its tail. That wide opening is held apart by two heavy steel plates called trawl doors or otter boards. As the ship moves forward, water pressure pushes against their angled surfaces, forcing them away from each other and keeping the net open. Each door weighs several tons, and together they act like wings, guiding the gear's flight through water a kilometre deep. Everything is connected to the ship by warp cables, heavy braided steel lines wound around the winch drums. These cables are the trawl's lifeline, linking the net, the doors, and the sea to the vessel's strength. As they unspool, their deep hum vibrates through the deck plates and into the soles of every boot. The captain eases the throttle until the ship settles to trawling speed, about 3 knots, the slow, steady pace needed to tow the net across the seabed without lifting it off. On the bridge, glowing screens show the system coming alive. Sonar traces the bottom contours, and a separate display monitors the trawl gear itself. Modern trawlers rely on net monitoring sensors, compact instruments attached to key points on the gear. They measure the spread of the doors, the tension on each warp, and the depth of the net, transmitting this data through the tow cables to receivers on the bridge. A second set of codden sensors, fitted to the tail section where the catch collects, measures pressure and fullness. When that section reaches capacity, a signal appears on the display, time to haul. Up close, the operation feels less like fishing and more like orchestration. Every winch, pulley and crane aboard is powered by hydraulic systems, pumps that move pressurized fluid through steel lines, providing smooth, controlled motion even in heavy seas. Hydraulics allow tons of steel to move as gracefully as the tide itself. The air smells of cold iron and hydraulic oil, a warm mechanical scent different from the sharper bite of fuel. The deckhands move with quiet focus, pulling pin locks, checking chains, and guiding the cables through rollers. They wear flotation jackets, hard helmets, and gloves lined with fleece. Conversation is brief and practical. Small talk here can wait until the nets are safely down. At the captain's signal, the winches turn. Slowly, steadily, the warp cables unwind, slipping into the sea in long, perfect arcs. Each line feeds out hundreds of meters before vanishing into grey water. Together, the doors, cables and net form a vast mechanical triangle spreading behind the ship, gliding into the deep. Warp length 2,000 meters, the first officer calls out. The words are recorded automatically in the logbook. That old ritual still kept on every bridge, written by hand in pencil. When the gear reaches its target depth, the captain trims the throttle. The displays show the doors holding steady. 65 meters apart, the net's mouth hovering just above the seabed. From this point forward, everything depends on precision, maintaining speed, angle, and pressure for hours at a time. Below, in the darkness 1,000 meters down, the trawl moves like a ghost. The rollers of the foot rope stir faint clouds of silt, and fish hidden in the sand rise in reflex. The water funnels them backward through the net's tapering shape until they settle in the final section. The cud end. The cod end is where all effort converges. The narrow, reinforced chamber that collects the catch. Its mesh is smaller, designed to hold the larger target fish while allowing smaller creatures to escape. That balance between harvest and restraint has taken decades to refine. Much of that design comes from research led by organizations such as the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and NOAA Fisheries. Their studies have guided improvements in selectivity, how trawl nets can catch desired species while reducing bycatch, the accidental capture of non-target fish and marine life. Large mesh openings near the net's front let juveniles and unwanted species swim free, while the end section narrows enough to retain only what the voyage came for. Even with technology and research, trawling remains a conversation between instinct and machine. The captain reads the sensors like a weather map, adjusting course when tension fluctuates, changing depth by 10 meters to follow the contour of the bottom. Every change costs fuel, but precision pays. Hours pass, the ship hums in steady rhythm, the sea a vast grey plain broken only by scattered birds tracing the wake. Below deck, the crew eats in shifts, glancing at the digital display between bites, a habit born of curiosity and quiet pride. When the codden sensors show rising pressure, the signal comes through with a soft tone. "Haul back," the captain says into the intercom. On deck, the hydraulic winches engage again, their drums spinning in reverse. The steel lines tighten, rising from the water with deep groans. The trawl doors appear first, sliding out of the sea like dark metal wings, dripping water that freezes in the air. Each door is swung into its cradle and locked. Then comes the net, drawn in section by section through heavy rollers. The mesh glistens with frost and spray. As the final length approaches, the cod end swollen and glimmering, the deck crew braces, is the heaviest part, dense with the weight of everything the ocean has offered. The cod end is lifted last, exactly as procedure dictates, because it contains the catch. A crane arm swings out above it, hydraulic motors whining softly. The boatswain, the deck foreman, guides the motion with one gloved hand. Slowly, carefully, the cod end rises clear of the water, bulging like a lung full of breath. The ship tilts slightly under the strain. "Easy," the boatswain murmurs. The crane pivots toward the sorting hatch, a rectangular opening that leads directly to the deck below. A single slice of a knife, and the rope knot unravels. The contents spill downward in a silver torrent, the sound a mix of water and motion and weight. Below, the processing plant comes alive. This is no small workspace. It's an entire factory built within the hull, running around the clock. Conveyor belts carry the catch through sorting tables, where workers bundled in waterproof suits separate species and sizes. Filleting machines hum in steady rhythm. Trimming knives flash under cold fluorescent light. The air smells of salt, ozone, and fresh fish, sharp but clean. From there, the catch moves into blast freezers, industrial chambers chilled to minus 30 degrees Celsius, minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The air inside feels like dry wind circulating constantly to freeze the fish within minutes. When the cycle ends, each block is as solid as stone, sealed and stacked in the ship's cold hold. Nothing spoils, nothing stops. Compared to small coastal boats, a vessel like this is a world of its own. A floating ecosystem where catching, cleaning, freezing and storage all happen at sea. The goal is efficiency, but beneath it lies respect. Waste nothing, lose nothing. Honour the labour that keeps the ship alive. Back on deck, the crew rinses away the frost and prepares for another tow. The trawl doors stand ready, glinting in the grey light. Hydraulics hiss as the drums rewind, the warp cables feeding back into place. Every action is deliberate, slow, and precise. The sea breathes around them, calm now, but unpredictable as ever. Somewhere below, the discarded fish from bycatch have already scattered back into the dark, their shapes vanishing into the drifting silt. For all its machinery, this work remains elemental. The ocean provides only as long as it's respected, and technology, no matter how refined, is still bound by that old truth. By midnight, the catch is processed, frozen, logged. The bridge notes the result in the daily record. Trawl completed, satisfactory catch, systems nominal. The men and women on watch step out to breathe the night air. Above them, the stars shimmer between passing clouds. Beneath, the ship hums steadily through the dark. The cables are ready again, the net folded like a promise. Soon it will open once more, the gear descending through 1,000 meters of black water, guided by signal and instinct, chasing the faint tremor of life that stirs the floor of the world. Chapter 5. Rhythm of Work. The ship keeps its own kind of time. There are no weekdays here, no weekends, only watches and meals, light and dark. The rhythm of work replaces the rhythm of the world. Aboard this trawler, life moves in cycles, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. It's called a watch rotation, a schedule that divides each day into equal halves so that the ship never stops. When one crew finishes its shift, another steps in, keeping engines, systems, and nets alive around the clock. It's practical, efficient, and quietly punishing. The cook is the first to rise. Long before dawn, the galley glows with low yellow light, and the stove ticks to life. The smell of coffee cuts through the metallic chill of the corridors. Pots rattle softly against the galley rails. Raise steel bars that keep them from sliding when the deck rolls. Out here, even breakfast requires balance. He cracks eggs into a bowl, moving in rhythm with the slow sway of the ship. Pancakes, porridge, fried bread, food built for endurance. For every shift change, there must be something hot waiting. Meals aren't just sustenance at sea, they're morale made visible. A narrow stair leads down to the mess, the communal eating space. The crew files in wordlessly, half awake, bundled in wool and fatigue. They eat without ceremony, listening to the hum of the ventilation and the heartbeat of the ship. Conversation is practical, how the net's held, what the sonar showed, when the next haul begins. Laughter comes quietly but often. Humour here is insulation. After the meal, the first watch steps out into the cold. The sun, when it appears, rises low and pale. The deck glitters with frost. Some head aft toward the winches, others forward to inspect cables and fittings. Each knows their tasks by instinct. Routine isn't just habit, it's safety. Below deck, the off-watch retreats to the cabins. Most rooms hold 2 people and a pair of bunks. Narrow beds built into the wall, stacked one above the other. Privacy is an illusion. Space is measured in inches. The air hums with machinery, a constant vibration that seeps through the walls. At first, it keeps newcomers awake. Later, it becomes the lullaby that lets them sleep. Sleep itself is fragmented. The 6-hour shifts, the ship's motion, and the endless mechanical hum keep bodies half awake even in rest. Dreams come in fragments. Some crew use earplugs, others find comfort in the vibration, proof that the vessel is still alive. The corridor outside the cabins is narrow enough for shoulders to brush steel. Pipes overhead carry warm water from the engine's waste heat circulation system, repurposed warmth that heats cabins and fresh water. The air smells faintly of oil and detergent, the scent of survival. Personal belongings are few, a photo taped to a locker door, a paperback folded open to the same page, a child's drawing laminated against moisture. Everything extra becomes clutter. The sea teaches simplicity. Up on the bridge, the new watch relieves the old. The officer signs the logbook, noting the hour and heading. The helmsman, though the ship runs mostly on autopilot, keeps a hand on the wheel out of tradition. Days blend into one another. Time isn't counted in hours but in hauls, each trawl, each catch, each reset of the gear. The repetition becomes a rhythm of survival. After every recovery, the deck is washed, the nets checked, the gear reset. There's satisfaction in the predictability. Calm weather feels like reward. Yet even on quiet days, danger waits. Every rope, every chain, every shifting trawl door carries risk. The deckhands know it well. They've seen what can happen when a steel cable snaps or a hook swings loose. They move deliberately, never rushing, always aware of where hands and feet are placed. Out here they live by a simple rule. 1 hand for the ship, 1 for yourself. A long-standing maritime safety maxim that means keeping a firm grip to steady your body before you reach for anything else. Balance, not bravery, keeps you alive. Commercial fishing is one of the most dangerous professions on Earth. The US National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, known as NIOSH, studies those numbers, and the results rarely change. Year after year, fishing ranks among the highest fatality occupations in the world. its deaths measured not in single digits, but in rates many times greater than the average worker. Most tragedies come from vessel losses, falls overboard, or machinery entanglements. The ocean gives and it takes. When storms return, fatigue deepens, muscles ache, hands stiffen, the deck heaves underfoot, the horizon disappearing and reappearing between walls of grey water. Sleep becomes brief and restless. The cook straps pots to the stove rails and jokes that the sea demands its share of breakfast. Still, work continues. Hydraulic drums turn, nets go out, come back, go out again. The rhythm never breaks because the sea doesn't wait. Evening, if such a thing exists, is marked by another meal. The stew is thick, the bread hard but warm. Someone tells a story, half true and half remembered. Voices rise, then fall back into the ship's hum. Between watches, some wander to the small smoking deck just aft of the wheelhouse. Cigarettes burn fast in the wind, orange sparks whipping into the dark. Others sit near the galley, writing messages home. Connection is possible now. Satellite internet and phone service beam through antennas overhead. But it's slow, expensive, and unreliable. Some nights it works, others nothing gets through. A single short message, "I'm fine, love you all well," can take minutes to send, but the waiting feels worth it. Distance plays tricks on the heart. Home becomes an echo, measured in time zones instead of miles. Birthdays, anniversaries, simple moments, they all happen somewhere else. The sea turns absence into its own kind of presence. Yet isolation breeds its opposite too. Long voyages forge strong bonds. Crew who might never meet on land become something closer than friends. They share everything: space, danger, laughter, silence. Conflicts arise and fade quickly. There's no room for grudges in a steel corridor. The ship itself becomes a small world with its own gravity, its own culture. During off hours, someone strums a guitar kept near the mess. Others play cards or repair worn gloves. A mechanic jokes with a deckhand about who owes who a coffee. The language of companionship is simple. A nod, a shared thermos, a joke retold. These small gestures hold the crew together when the sea tries to pull them apart. Occasionally the captain calls a safety meeting. Everyone squeezes into the mess, shoulders against walls. The talk is familiar. Keep lines clear, check your harness. One mistake out there, and there's no second chance. It's rote, almost ritual. But the sincerity is clear. Every person aboard has lost someone in this trade or knows someone who has. When the sea calms, fatigue softens into a gentler kind of quiet. The horizon stretches smooth and silver. The air smells faintly of snow. Some stand by the rail and watch the ship's wake vanish into distance. Others retreat to their bunks, lulled by the vibration that fills every inch of the vessel. In those rare still moments, thoughts drift homeward. The faces of loved ones come easily then. Wives, husbands, children, parents. A deckhand might count the weeks until port, tracing the calendar in his head. Time on land feels different. Out here, it folds and stretches like the sea itself. Later, in the small hours, the trawler feels almost weightless. The lights from the wheelhouse cast a faint amber glow across the deck. Somewhere below, the main engine maintains its steady rhythm. The vibration is constant, an invisible tether connecting everyone aboard. A deckhand makes his rounds with a flashlight, checking hatches, listening for anything out of place. The beam slides over valves and gauges. Everything hums as it should. Predictability here is peace. In the galley, the cook is already awake again, humming softly while the coffee brews. His voice carries down the corridor, mingling with the low percussion of the ship. Soon, footsteps will echo on the steel, and another shift will begin. The rotation continues. One watch waking, another sleeping, one meal ending as another starts. Somewhere between exhaustion and familiarity, the crew find a kind of calm. They are bound by duty, by habit, and by a shared belief that work done well keeps everyone safe. The ocean may test them, but they endure together. The hum of the diesel below is steady as a heartbeat. It seeps through bunks, rails, and decks, the sound of the ship breathing. Out here, that sound means life. Machines working, lights burning, warmth flowing, and so they keep faith with the vessel, with each other, with the sea that holds them. The rhythm of work becomes the rhythm of being. It is relentless, yes, but it is also beautiful in its steadiness, a quiet promise carried through the dark, that as long as the engine turns, they are still here, still moving, still alive. Chapter 6. Weather Turns. The change begins quietly, not with thunder or warning, but a shift in the air, a coldness that creeps through steel and skin, and a light that turns the sea from grey to iron. The men say nothing. They've seen enough weather to feel what's coming. On the bridge, the first mate taps the brass barometer fixed to the wall. Its needle has begun to fall, a slow slide downward that always means the same thing. Pressure dropping, a low system building somewhere to the west. The ocean, like the sky, is starting to inhale. By late afternoon, the swells lose their rhythm. The light dulls, flattening the water's motion into heavy folds. The captain brings the bow a few degrees into the wind, not squarely ahead, but at an angle that lets the hull cut instead of slam. Out here, even direction becomes negotiation. Wind strengthens past 30 knots, a force 8 gale on the Beaufort scale, enough to peel spray off the waves and turn it to smoke. The small anemometer on the mast spins faster, its whisper rising with the wind's pitch. The horizon fades until sea and sky merge into a single grey wall. Snow starts as dust, then thickens into horizontal streaks that melt on the deck and freeze again an instant later. By dusk, the rails are slick, the steps shining like glass. The crew moves slower now. They clip their harness lines to the waist-high cables that run the length of the deck, lifelines that keep a man connected when the ship lurches. Each wears an immersion suit beneath the outer layers, bright red, buoyant and insulated, made for the worst-case moment when the sea itself comes calling. Below deck, engineers make their rounds by touch and habit. The engine's rhythm has changed, a deeper pulse, steady but working harder. They run gloved hands over gauges, checking the oil pressure, the coolant flow, the steady hiss of seawater through pipes. The metal hums beneath their fingers, alive and listening. Up above, the motion changes from roll to pitch. The trawler begins to climb and fall, each descent hitting with a sound like thunder. Sailors call it punching, the bow striking into a head sea. The vibration runs through every deck, through the soles of boots and the roots of teeth. Loose chains rattle. The trawl cables groan and tremble under tension. Anything not secured finds its own voice. Cups, tools, doors, all joining the weather's percussion. The boatswain moves from station to station, his words stolen by the wind but his meaning understood. The men work by glance and gesture now, each movement deliberate. Talking in this noise would only waste breath. In the galley, the cook braces himself against the counter-rails as pots slide and clatter. Soup circles inside its pot. The ship sway, stirring it as though by invisible hand. He laughs under his breath. If it stays in the pot, it's a good day. In the mess, a few crew eat standing, one hand steadying the wall, another gripping a spoon. They say little. The sound of the sea replaces conversation. Up on the bridge, the captain watches the screens. The radar shivers with false echoes. Rain, snow, waves, all blurring into light. The echo sounder below him pings erratically off the seabed, its signals distorted by turbulence. On the plotter, the ship's course drifts half a mile leeward, the storm pushing them sideways. He corrects the rudder by a single degree, small changes, small control. Outside, wind threads through the rigging, the lattice of cables and antennas crowning the bridge. It turns the ship into an instrument. Each gust plays a different note, a rising metallic whistle that merges with the deeper groan of steel flexing. Floodlights carve narrow cones through the spray. Beyond them, there is only white motion. Men on deck crouch low, clipped to the lifeline, breaking ice from the rails with wooden mallets. Frozen spray builds on every surface. Too much of it high above the deck makes a ship top-heavy, and they all know the danger of that weight. Below, the heat is oppressive. The engine room holds 30 degrees of warmth, the breath of a living thing beneath an Arctic storm. Engineers work in shirts, sweat glinting while the deck above them freezes solid. 2 climates, 2 worlds, divided by steel. Sleep is useless. In the bunks, men wedge themselves into corners or strap in with webbing to keep from falling. Dreams are brief and jumbled, half awake, half noise. The ship has become a heartbeat that no one can escape. The captain hasn't left the bridge. His coffee cools beside the chart table. The barometer reads 970 millibars, still dropping. Somewhere ahead, the storm's centre turns unseen. In the static, a voice cuts through the radio. Another trawler, hundreds of miles away, reports the same weather. Calm, professional, like it's all routine. It helps, somehow, knowing someone else is out there fighting the same fight. At midnight, the pressure stops falling. The wind steadies at 45 knots and gusts higher. Waves climb 5-6 meters, 16-20 feet, rising black and falling white. Every crest hides the next. Water crashes across the bow and freezes as it falls, building layers on the glass of the wheelhouse until the wipers screech under the ice. Lightning flickers deep in the clouds. Thunder follows after long seconds, slow, rolling, like the voice of something too large to see. Below, the cook lashes the refrigerator shut with rope. If that thing falls over, we're done, he says, grinning. His laughter is half bravado, half defiance. Every storm teaches humility. The stabilizers, small fins that extend from the hull to counteract roll, work constantly now, though even their power fades when seas grow steep. Technology can ease motion but never erase it. The captain reduces speed again, letting the ship move with the storm instead of against it. Survival at sea is often a matter of cooperation, not conquest. Out on deck, men become shadows behind spray. Floodlights catch snow flying sideways, turning the world to silver static. They keep their lines clipped and their heads down, checking lashings and scuppers, the deck drains that must stay open so water can run off. If those clog, the sea climbs aboard. In the engine room, the hum stays steady. Gauges flicker in the light, but their needles don't move. The diesel's beat is slow and strong. As long as that pulse continues, the ship has a heart. Then, around 3 a.m, a single wave rises larger than the rest. It hits from the port side, a wall of water double the height of the others. The ship rolls hard, 15 degrees or more. Metal groans. A chair skids. A pot shatters. Then, slowly, she rights herself. The rogue wave passes like a hand withdrawn. The crew exhales in silence. The sea has reminded them of scale, but the vessel still holds. Storms like this write their own entries in the logbooks of NIOSH, the US National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. It's the agency that studies why so many fishers never return. Vessels lost to weather, men swept overboard, machinery torn apart by stress. The statistics are grim, but here they feel abstract. The numbers are somewhere else. The danger is here, immediate, intimate. Toward dawn, the needle on the barometer steadies. The wind drops, first by breath, then by voice, then by silence. Snow softens to rain. The light returns pale and uncertain, like something cautious. The captain steps outside onto the bridge wing, steam rising from his breath. The deck below is coated in frost, ropes stiff as rods. He grips the railing, feeling it still vibrate faintly with the sea's memory. Down in the galley, the cook lights the stove again. The sound of the burner catching carries up the stairwell, followed by laughter. The same tune every storm ends with, equal parts exhaustion and relief. Someone brings the captain a fresh mug of coffee, and he drinks it in one slow swallow, eyes on the grey horizon. Then comes the work of mending. Storm recovery follows ritual, stern to bow, everything inspected by hand. Lines are retied, shackles checked, lashings replaced. Ice breaks away from the trawl doors in hard metallic slabs. Paint is scraped, ropes coiled, order restored. The engineers drain the fuel separators, a precaution against seawater intrusion, and mark new readings in the log. Oil pressure steady, coolant temperature constant, exhaust clear. The engine's heartbeat has not faltered once. On deck, the sound of wooden mallets echoes across the quiet sea as men chip away the last of the ice. The shards slide overboard in glints of silver. The air smells clean again, stripped of salt and tension. Inside, bunks fill with sleeping bodies. Rest after a storm comes deep and instant, is not exhaustion so much as release. By midday the clouds break. Sunlight glints off the water like scattered glass. The waves, though still tall, have lost their edges. The trawler steadies herself. The deckhands move with more ease, but their eyes keep drifting to the horizon. No one forgets how quickly peace can change its mind. By afternoon, the nets go out again. The hydraulic drums spin smoothly, the cables paying out without protest. Routine returns like breath after holding it too long. But beneath it all, the crew listens, to the timbre of the wind, to the faint change in the engine's note. When dusk comes, the sea gleams silver under a clean sky. The first officer stands outside, cup in hand, watching light fade through mist. The air smells of thawing salt and iron. He doesn't think of the storm's fury anymore, only of the steadiness that carried them through. Out here, calm isn't absence, it's recovery. As night settles, the logbook gains its final line for the day. Storm past, minor damage, crew safe. Course resumed west-northwest. The trawler's lights glow soft against the dark. Inside, warmth spreads through her corridors, and the sound of engines becomes music again. The storm already feels like a story, one that will be told over dinner, half grim, half grateful. Because on this sea, survival isn't victory, it's participation, the quiet pact between ship and ocean to keep moving together, wave after wave, until the next weather finds them again. And so she does, steady once more, the barometer rising, the sea behind her silver and endless.